Welcome to St. Charles Patriot Radio. I'm your host, Representative Richard West, District 102, proudly serving southern St. Charles County, the New Melly and Augusta, Defiance area. With me today, I have my northern neighbor from District 108, I believe.
District 108.
District 108. I have Representative Mike Costlow, and we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to introduce Mike today, get to know Mike a little bit, and then we're also going to move into some energy legislation and talk a little bit about what's going on in Lake St. Louis with reference to some water issues and the waterways and the lake of Lake St. Louis. So having said that, Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So we've really, last week, we checked in, right?
We checked in.
We didn't do much.
We said hi.
Yeah, we said hi. Got to shake hands with all of our colleagues. But this week, we kind of started to get involved a little bit with a lot of the committees. Yeah. And starting to get, I actually had the first piece of legislation through executive session of our committee, the first piece exec out this week.
It's fast.
And I know. So we're moving with light speed here at the Capitol, trying not to spend too much of your money, but that doesn't seem to work that way, does it?
Efficiency spends less money, right? We're getting to work. We're earning it.
There's nothing efficient about this building.
There's not.
So, okay. Look, having said that, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you've done in the past, what you're doing now, and why you're up here at the Capitol with us.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, Representative Mike Costlow, this is my second year starting here in the House. Last year, I was really getting my feet under me, but this year, I think I understand it a little bit better. My goal was to shut up and learn and not stick my foot in my mouth and learn from the mistakes of others. And I think I've done that at least a little bit. So this year, I expect a lot of good things. Background, I moved here from Florida a number of years ago. I've worked in regulated spaces and utilities, both in telecom and electric for a while. But I've had a wide breadth of experience in my professional career, everything from sitting behind a desk 12 hours a day to climbing radio towers 500 feet in the air and installing big devices on the side of them. So I've had a fun career. Never thought it would land me in the House, though.
I guess you're not afraid of heights, huh?
I'm afraid of falling.
Well, yeah, we all are.
as long as I'm tied off, I'm okay. But yeah, so at the end of last year, I left the professional world. I worked in IT pretty much the entire time, but in the utility spaces. And now I own a restaurant. So I own Village Cafe out in Lake St. Louis, which has been quite an adventure.
One of my favorite breakfast places on Sunday morning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, a little bit, how does that affect what you do up here? I mean, or let's say you coming up here, how does that affect things back home? I'm sure you have a family.
Oh, yeah. I have the most amazing wife that has ever existed on the face of planet Earth, who is supportive and recognizes the need for good conservative leadership in Jeff City. And we toiled over the decision to run. It was not something that we really sought after. But when the imperative came in front of us, we sat down and we prayed a lot, and we talked through the logistics. And she said, we're in. This is the place. This state is where our kids are going to grow up, and we see it turning down a path of no return. If we continue going the places we are, then our kids are not going to have a state that they can call home. And so she has been true to that. And our 5 kids, I've got Michael, Emily, Hannah, Elias, and Henry. Oldest one is 10. Youngest one was born during the campaign last year in 24. And it's been quite a wild ride. Yeah,
as I speak to legislators across the gambit, every one of them pretty much says it takes a good spouse back home to make this happen, because we're up here 4 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
When we get rolling, we're up here 4 days a week, and then we come home, and then everybody wants a piece of us when we get back home. Mm-hmm. It makes it hard to run a business and or run a family. I mean, but on the other side of the coin, we pray a lot. At least you and I do, and folks like us. We pray a lot about this. I too, before I decided to take this job, went to my family and I said, my children were older. And I had to look my children in the face and say, look, if your dad's going to become a public figure like this, I mean, I was a mayor before, but this is a little different. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to go up to the state and start trying to create and mold legislation that's going to help the people of the state of Missouri, I kind of need you guys to conduct yourself in an adult manner. It's just one of those things, and a lot of praying. As with you, our family took a lot of time. This is not a decision you take lightly.
No.
And when you make that dedication to come up here and work for Missourians, you want to make sure you're doing the right thing for you and your family and the people you represent. So
Yeah.
I'll just say this to you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And note that I want to make, because you see a lot of people coming up here that are not encumbered by young children. You've got a lot of people who are retired. And it's great to have that perspective here and people with that kind of time. But the problem that comes there is you end up with one group of people that kind of make all the decisions for the state. And unless we have people, and this is a call I make out, especially to St. Charles County, it's easy with all the stuff we have going on, the daily grind, and we're in an area where you've got to perform or else you can't live here. It's easy to become apathetic to this stuff. It's easy to set it on the back burner. But if we don't have business leaders, if we don't have families coming up here and representing, then we miss that entire swath of we're unrepresented. And so we have to take that sacrifice, at least for a small bit of time, and do the good we can.
Right. Right. Well, on that note, you mentioned our St. Charles County delegation. And look, I can't say enough to the St. Charles County folks out there that listen to the show. You really have a great delegation in St. Charles County. You've got business leaders, you've got civic leaders, you've got some teachers, you've got attorneys, you've got retired people. You've got a whole gamut representing you at the state level. And believe it or not, we all kind of work together.
Yeah.
I don't agree with everybody. I don't agree with anybody 100% of the time. But what we do agree on is we want good policies for our families and our children.
Yes.
And I do believe that we're all working towards those policies, and we do what needs to be done. So, again, thank you for this, for coming up and coming on the show today, because we're going to, in the next segment here, we're going to talk about some of the things that has happened this week. And I want to talk directly to you about energy policy, because as long as I've known you, Mike, you've done a really good job of, even though I disagree with some of the things, I believe your heart is true to trying to create good energy policy for the state of Missouri and for the people of St. Charles County. And maybe on the backside, we'll touch a little bit on data centers.
Big topic.
It is a big topic, and people will be really surprised to know, who know me will be surprised to know what I have to say about it. But we'll get into that. But before we do that, before we go off, we got a few minutes before we go off to break. But I do want to, let's talk about some things that are happening in St. Charles County. Some things, what in your district, what are some of the most important issues in your district?
Yeah, there's a lot happening out in the west side of St. Charles County right now. Some of them that keep popping up. One, as everybody knows and can't avoid, the construction on 70 and coming down Highway 40 or 64, that is causing quite a bit of stir. And it definitely affects Lake St. Louis. It affects Wentzville pretty hard. We've got issues with Highway N and that getting congested in large part because of the massive influx of people who want to live in St. Charles County. I personally had some issues with a lot of the apartments and high density housing coming through, and well documented. And we're now seeing the issues with that. So infrastructure's got to catch up. And then probably the biggest thing facing Lake St. Louis right now is the issues with upstream on Peru Creek and the Peru Creek watershed. Sedimentation from development is coming down and filling up the lake. This is something that people in Lake St. Louis know about, but outside of that probably don't. Just how quickly that lake fills up with sediment, and it's accelerating at a rate that is just untenable. Millions of dollars are spent to dredge that lake and keep it usable. But remember, that lake is essential to the health of Western St. Charles County. If that lake were to come into an unusable state, if it ended up with algae blooms and things like that, it would affect the health and welfare of the entire county. The entire county is downstream from it.
This is interesting because I've heard, so we've had some businesses going in Warren County, and that there was a direct correlation to some things, the sediments and whatnot. I paid a little bit of attention to it because, it did affect, in my time, that was my district was Eastern Warren County and the development of those businesses. And I was paying attention, and I did get some notification from residents that, hey, this is an issue, but I am in no way as deep in as you are on this. And as we've talked over the last few months over these issues, I'm just like St. Louis.
Yeah, and it highlights what a lot of people don't know is we don't just sit in a room and talk about a policy. We've got a lot of district work that we do and interjecting and seeing what we can do to help out. So one of the things I've been doing has been reaching out to all the municipalities around. We've got Forestell, Wright City, Wentzville, because that's all within that watershed. And we're coming together to have joint conversations around what we can do to protect the watershed and protect Peru Creek. And what's really great And I love seeing this when the state and the local and everyone works together for a solution, we get it done. We really do. And for all of our differences in St. Charles County, I think everyone has that goal of making this the best county in the state of Missouri. We are the largest Republican county in the state of Missouri. We're incredibly important to this state.
We are.
Oftentimes the tipping point, we've got to be strong and unified.
Yeah, no, I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but we do have cities and representation outside of our county. Warren County is right next door to us. One of the things that most people don't even know, and the more I learned about this, early on in the development of the food groups, what do we call it? The cattle processing plant,
American Food Group,
the cattle processing plant out there. There was so much uneducation when that first came in, and the hubbub around that and how they were going to pollute the creeks and everything else. And in reality, what happened was through great leaders and people that talked this out and did the proper homework, the business actually came in and did really good, some good things for the area and for water purity and water movement through there. And now we're sitting and we actually have some really good things that came of this, but it's because we talked.
Yes.
Okay. We dispelled the ambiguities out there, the things that people just didn't know. So they start making things up, and then those made up things get pushed around as truths. It was really, really impressive the way the community came together. I have to give Forestell and Warrenton some really good kudos because they worked hard on this issue and made sure that the people got the answers that they needed.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We have really good communities out there working.
We do. And this highlights another thing that we'll probably touch on if we touch on data centers later is in absence of information, it's easy to fill that in with the worst case scenario. And I think that's what happened out there. And then once the time came to give that information, and once the potential developer came out and started saying, here's what we're going to do, and here's the controls we're putting in place, people didn't believe it. And what I urge people to do all the time is withhold your judgment until you have all the information. Let's be data driven, let's be objective, and let's find the truth before we get too worked up.
Yeah. So we got about a minute left before we go off to break, and I'll just say this to back you up on that there. When you send us up to the state or you hire your local governments, generally they are looking for the best of what's best for the community. And we don't always have the answers. We do seek them out. And there is a difference between local government and state government. I think when you get up to state, you start protecting people on a broader range. And there's a lot more to look at than just trying to take care of a smaller community. So with about 20 seconds left, we'll come back. I want to talk a little bit about the governor's address the other day, this State of the State, and we'll talk a little bit about some nuclear energy.
Love it.
And you're an expert on that. So having said that, we're going to check out here, move on to the next segment, and we'll be back in a few. Back to St. Charles Patriot Radio. I am your host, Missouri State Representative Richard West. With me today, I have Representative Mike Costlow from the Lake St. Louis area. And last segment, we were talking about a little bit about his district and a little bit about him. We know that he is, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, a pretty darn good source for information on energy and energy technology.
If I don't know it, I can find it.
So we all know the governor had his State of the State address this week, and part of that address was to the Missouri people that we are going to move back into. I say back into because we already have a nuclear facility, but we're going to move back into the exploration of trying to produce energy with nuclear power.
No.
He didn't really go into detail on that, but I'm sure you probably know more about that. First of all, what do you think about his statement? It was a pretty bold statement.
It is. I think the quote was, "We are all in on nuclear power."
There you go.
And in the background, what we're seeing is a resurgence of nuclear across the country. And we saw that with Donald Trump and talking about putting a small modular reactor on every military installation. Things. This country is starting to recognize the benefits of nuclear technology, clean, renewable. It is powerful. We do not have to rely on everybody else around the world for our supply of fuel. Nuclear is definitely the way to go. And so I think Governor Kehoe rightfully sees that as the path, and there is no place better than Missouri for it.
Yeah. So the hubbub has been around for a few years. But we really haven't, like I said, we really haven't had much details. But I myself have learned a lot about what do they call modulars? They basically can come in and pretty much set those things and then move them if they need to be. So the technology is there. We know other places in the world they're utilizing these things and they're working out pretty good. Is that correct? Or
sorta. So a lot of it is theoretical. We've heard that Russia and China have some, but I don't think we have confirmed that. Of course, they always want to claim to be the first.
Yeah. Well, see, there we go. I don't know everything, but now there's been a lot of talk nationally about it, and in some of the events we go to, there's a lot of talk about that too. So, how can we get ourselves, first of all, what are the processes of even exploring these issues? Is there a service commission involved in this?
Yeah. So and this, we can get back into kind of the history of where we got with nuclear and why nuclear isn't being built right now in the United States. And it is a lot of red tape. You saw a lot of nuclear facilities pop up. We slowed down on it. Others put pedal to the metal. France, for example, has run the majority of their power comes from nuclear, and they're doing a great job at it. We stopped after some of these bigger issues. 3 Mile Island really hit it really hard, and people got scared of nuclear for a little while. Turns out, post-op, we can easily resolve those issues, and nuclear is incredibly safe. And including the issues with 3 Mile Island were blown way out of proportion as far as impact. But the result of that is our supply lines for concrete and metal and the reactor materials, things like that, it went away. So it increased the cost of building these things massively. And then, so from the 80s until now, we really haven't seen much done. Though during that time, we've learned a lot because you mentioned we have a nuclear reactor in the state. We actually have 3. Okay. And a lot of people don't know that because we have Callaway that everyone knows. But we also have, down in Rolla, we have S&T. They have been running and empowering their campus with a small reactor, not modular, it's not the new stuff, but a small reactor for decades. And then we've got Mizzou that has their research reactor. They're running a 4 megawatt. Missouri has been operating safely with nuclear for many decades.
So that's interesting. You bring up Mizzou. Didn't we have some legislation last year that dealt with that?
So they want to expand.
Yeah.
They have seen such success and such safety. They've gotten accolades all over the place for how safe and successful they've been with these pharmaceuticals, these nuclear pharmaceuticals, that they want to build one twice the size.
All right.
Yeah.
So, well, let's just touch on that now. Let's set aside energy production for a minute and some of the other benefits that and I in no way know about this. I know about it, but I don't know the details of it. You probably know more. What exactly, let's talk about Mizzou, for example. What exactly does that nuclear facility do there?
Yeah, a good question. So essentially what they do there, they have nuclear pharmaceuticals, which generally are cancer medications. So they will find a carrier material, and a carrier material is something that will seek out cancer cells within the body, and they will irradiate those. So when that is injected, when that is ingested, those materials will seek out the cancer, attach to them, and then the radiological particles will kill the cancer. Okay. And so it is a systemic, and they've had some really good results with it without having to go through through major chemotherapy that's very destructive. So this is a less invasive way to cure cancers. And the half-life on the isotopes that they use is very quick. We're talking weeks, not millennia. And so we're seeing uses for nuclear medicine and nuclear power across this state, across the country.
Yeah, and from what I understand, we appear to be at the forefront of that.
Oh yeah,
throughout the United States and probably the world. Mm-hmm. But it's very interesting that we have it right here at home. So I recall the legislation last year, and we set aside some funding to increase or to at least help fund some of the increase in the size of that nuclear reactor?
A lot of private money coming in. They do have some profits that they make off these pharmaceuticals, the nuclear medicine, and so between all the sources, it's not all going on the taxpayer, but it is putting Missouri's on the map in a huge way for nuclear medicine.
Okay, so how does that affect now energy production, nuclear? So currently, our energy production. I'm gonna segue into energy production and usage in the state of Missouri. From my understanding, is we currently supply enough to provide our needs. Okay, but of course, outside sources are always looking to purchase our excess. And how does all of that work? Now, I could explain it, but I'd be bumbling all over the place. I'm going to let you explain that, because I do believe people need to know this, because we have some issues in front of us right now that are going to become very important. Data centers, transmission lines, sales to other states. If we're producing, what are we going to sell? How much are we going to charge? And how is that controlled? So let's just talk about our current production and where we're at with that.
Yeah, that we could spend hours talking about just those questions right there. Our current production, we are covering across the state. We are covering our current needs. Not by a lot, though. Remember that power usage, it peaks and valleys. Middle of the day, in the middle of summer, you're going to see massive utilization. Those are our peak utilizations through the year. And we are right there on the edge. Of course, we don't want to undersupply. If we do, then we have to buy from other people. And Missouri doesn't want to do that.
Right.
One of our strengths is power production. So if we do, we have to go to the regionals, which on the east side of the state is MISO, and it covers all the way up to Minnesota. On the west side of the state is Southwest Power Pool, which is from kind of Texas, the north border of Texas, on up. And we can pay a huge penalty if we overrun our power and have to start buying from them. Then you have to go to the fire sale, and that's never cheap.
No. I think Texas fell into that a couple years ago.
They did. They tried to isolate themselves, or did so a little bit too much, and they hit that peak. And you saw power bills go from $300 on a bill to $3,000, and we don't want that here in Missouri.
No. And just for the edification of the folks in St. Charles County, we all remember the Tom Sauk reservoir failure a few years back. And I was like, what the heck is that, and what's it doing? Well, one of the benefits of being a state rep is you get to tour the state and learn a lot about our state and the things that go on.
Yeah.
They took us out to the Tom Sauk reservoir, and I actually got to go up to the top of it, which was really cool. But the better part about that was I actually learned what this thing does, right?
Yeah.
They call it a big battery. And they release a lot of water out during high demand, and that powers the generators. And then at night, during low demand, they pump the water up slowly back up to the top at a significantly less cost. It's pretty much a closed loop system. The reservoir, and what happened was as a result of the breakage of the reservoir itself. But you have this reservoir full of water, and it's like they said, it's a battery. So during the day, it's producing. At night, it's recharging. And the benefit to the Missouri people is actually huge, because during high demand, we have that there. And that's just one part of how we produce, or how we provide Missourians with electric. And and this show is a great place to talk to people, because we are now being threatened again. And I say the word threatened because we are. Whether or not that is the accurate word to be used, we are being threatened with the fear of lack of energy if we start using it for data centers. We'll talk a little bit more. We've got a few minutes left. We'll talk on this a little bit now, but I want to dig deeper into this in the next segment. But data centers deserve to be talked about instead of, look, nobody wants it in their backyard. Everybody's fearful that the data centers are going to use up all the electric, and they're going to use up all the water. But if we don't have these discussions about what they truly are and what truly is going on, and believe me, I have no interest in providing any support for these in the means that I'm receiving anything on the other end, or I want to talk people into it. I just want to educate myself and my constituents so that when these things come around, that we have an honest discussion, sort of like the packaging plant, which is now a benefit for the people in the area.
Right.
So,
and I think
what's your take on this?
I think you're right to call it a threat. Every threat has a potential benefit too. They themselves are neither and both at the same time. And luckily, we're late to the game as far as data centers go. So we have examples across the nation of people who did it well, people who did it poorly. We don't want to do it poorly. You look at states that have offered tax incentives that haven't put good protections on their electricity, and it hurt them. And we need to talk about that. We need to make sure that that is front and center, but they can also be a big benefit if we put the right controls in place. I'll give you an example. I'm working to finish up a bill right now that I'm going to be filing, dealing with just that. Some of the issues from the other states protecting Missouri. SB4 put a great protection in that it's very short but very powerful, that any large load consumer, which would be all these new data centers, must pay the entire cost to produce power and give it and supply it to them. That means everything from the fuel in the power plant that's needed. If a new power plant needs to be built for them, then they have to build that new power plant on their own dime. All the transmission upgrades, all of the substation upgrades, everything has to go back to them by law now. That's huge. That only touches the investor-owned utilities, of which we have 3, Ameren, Evergy, and Liberty. All the co-ops don't have that requirement right now. That's dangerous. So where I am with Quiver River, that protection's not there. We need to put that there. And then you've got the water side. We talk about water a lot. Missouri is a state that is abundant. We have the Mississippi right next to us. We can have as much water as we want, but we need to make sure that the clean water that is available to us goes first to people who need it, and that same principle applies, that the cost of producing new power or filtering new power to new water is applied entirely to the data center developer and not to the people. So as long as we have the right protections in place, then we can benefit from the massive tax revenues that we get from them, which should go directly to offsetting the taxes that we as residents pay. I'd love to see personal property tax start to go away thanks to these data centers. But then we also have to make sure that we're zoning correctly. And that's a conversation that has to happen with every industry.
Sure. We've got about 30 seconds left. We'll continue this conversation on when we come back in the next segment, because what we're talking about here, these things are affecting St. Charles Countyans on a daily basis. As we speak, there's large water resources going through southern St. Charles County and sewage as well. So having that in mind, we're going to go off to break, go out and enjoy a cold one. We'll be back in a few, folks. Welcome back to St. Charles Patriot Radio. I'm your host, Missouri State Representative Richard West, proudly serving District 102, which is southern St. Charles County. I'm going to say God's country down there, where all the wineries and distilleries are. And, if you ever have any time and you're looking for something to do, just take a drive down to southern St. Charles County. There's a lot down there. Every time I go down, I find something new. There's the Sunflower Farm down there. There's a couple of wineries down there. There's just, it's an afternoon of gorgeous driving, and you'll still find more every time you go. I have with me today Representative Mike Costlow from the Lake St. Louis area, where my business is located, Overstock Outlet. We're a sponsor of the show, so I can say that. But out there along Highway N, one of the things that's great about Lake St. Louis is the ease at which businesses, let me back up, not the ease, but the lack of regulation. And I say lack of because you still regulate the businesses. Mm-hmm. They still regulate the businesses, and we still have rules we have to follow, but they work with the business so easy. My wife made a statement to me earlier this year. She was like, or actually late last year, she was like, I enjoy, now we've had our business in 3 different cities. And she's like, this is by far the easiest. I just go online. They make it very easy. I don't have to have all this other stuff, and they give me my business license. Just something as simple as that.
Oh yeah.
So I have lots of good things to say about Lake St. Louis. They've always been responsive to any of my needs, and I believe when you're in a good place like that, where you have regulations to protect just enough, but not overbearing to keep businesses and clientele and folks like that to keep your business from thriving. I don't ask for anything from Lake St. Louis other than to allow me to run my business the way I need to, to be profitable and enjoy what I do. I can guarantee you can go to other parts of the county and other parts of the state where that is just not true. So, being a part of that governmental process and being a part of now the state level, I appreciate what you guys have done. So we were talking before we went on to break, talking about these data centers, and I'm still learning a lot about myself. But what I continually tell people is keep your mind open. Let's talk about it.
Yes.
Let us know what you want as a constituency, as a society. Let us know what you want, and we can work from there. And we'll do our best to educate you, because a lot of times we are educating ourselves as this process goes along.
Right.
What I don't like, and I'll just tell you, I'm not trying to filibuster here, but what I don't like is, and we can talk about this because we have, what I don't like is these cities and city managers that enter into a non-disclosure where they start making deals behind your back in secrecy. And sometimes there are things that need to be protected. I get it. But when you start making deals and then you come out to your constituents, you say, this is the way it's going to be. Look what we worked out for you. And the constituents never really had a say so, or they find out things that are either not educated, they're not educated properly on, or they just don't know the answers and we're not giving them to them.
Right.
They really just tend to get frustrated. And out of that frustration comes fear. And out of fear comes a lot of things. So, Mike, how do we keep that from happening?
It's a tough one, but not insurmountably tough. You talk about frustration, and that's the perfect word for it. I get to see a little bit behind the scenes on some of these things that aren't available to the public, and no one is more frustrated than me when I look at it and say, well, you need to tell them that. Oh, we have a solution for this. Well, don't hide it from people. Right. Tell them that. If you have a big development that's going in and everyone's saying, I'm worried about the water, and behind the scenes you say, okay, well, they have a solution. They're going to build their own separate system. They're not going to interfere with everything. Tell them that, because otherwise you're just creating fear and panic and frustration within residents that isn't necessary. It's distracting. And frankly, if you do that, you should rightfully be denied.
Yeah. Well, and that creates distrust with government in general. I mean, it breeds from the local level, goes up to the state level, and then we can go on. The federal government has already created that fear and distrust in our in our minds. But we have to look at things. I have an issue in my district where the expansion of population it's due to come. It's inevitable. What we're trying to do is figure out how we want to smart growth, I guess you could say, right. How we want to grow our population where we live smartly. A lot of people have a lot of money invested. A lot of people have a lot of time invested. There's family farms. I'm a big proponent of property rights, but at the same time, my property rights might mean I spent a lot of money to be down there to be in a less populated area. Right. But your property rights might mean, hey, I got a 400-acre farm that's been in the family and it's now worth, $50 million. And, I'd like to go retire somewhere. So we have to be careful. Everybody has their own rights, and we have to figure these things out. And I think good governance, transparency is how we get these things done. Yeah. Mike, I don't know. Did we finish talking everything you wanted to talk to about the data centers, or is there anything you want to touch on before we move on?
Yeah, just a couple notes on the data center issue, because I think that one of the positives of data center, and we don't talk about it enough. So since I've got the mic, I'm gonna say it. Already talked about how we can have some detrimental policies and how they can be a threat. But we also have opportunities to bolster our utility systems on their dime, not on the taxpayer dime, which is a positive for all of us. I remember utility systems, they benefit from scale. The larger the system, the cheaper the unit is. So right now we are 9th in the nation for cheapest residential electric rates. We are 9th in the nation out of 50. We'll never be number one. I was just up in Wyoming this over interim and visited a coal-fired plant that is so close to the mines in Wyoming that they literally use a conveyor belt from the mine to the plant. We're never getting cheaper than places like that.
I was going to say, yeah.
But we are starting to get it bottomed out to where we are one of the most attractive places for manufacturing. Our residential rates are so low that people can afford. I know that it feels onerous, and we've had some pretty massive rate spikes. We need to get rid of the spikes. But I will tell you, everyone around us, they want to live in Missouri and have the rates, even though it hurts us right now because we've seen those spikes.
So let's talk about the spikes for a minute.
Yeah.
Everybody, hey, look, I voted against SB4. Mm-hmm. Okay, I've got my reasons. You've got yours. But everybody thinks SB4 is what caused the rate spikes.
That's the narrative.
And let's just be honest. I mean, I'm bringing this up because I know that's not what happened. Yeah. Explain to us what happened.
Yeah, so when everyone was blaming SB4 for the rate increases, SB4 hadn't even taken effect yet. It wasn't even possible for that to. What we saw is a number of years ago, there was deals made with the PSC and all the utilities. They wanted to make some upgrades to their systems that were needed. Yep. They were needed upgrades. If we don't keep up with technology, then we end up falling behind and we have safety issues. There's things that we don't want to happen. So those investments were allowed to be made, but the agreement was you don't get to raise rates. So they looked at it at a 10-year horizon and they said, okay, we'll do it now and we'll increase efficiency by a huge margin, but we're going to keep rates flat. And so we saw flat rates in Missouri for a long time, but that was borrowing from the future to have low rates. And once that time came up, they said, all right, it's time for us to readjust. And so in exchange for those 10 years of really low rates, we had a big bump. And at the same time, timing was horrible. It was summer, and we have this scheme in Missouri that allows for summer rates, air quotes, which I think are horrendous because each year during the heaviest use months of the year, they allow a rate increase that can be up 40, 50% higher than your typical rates. And there's a couple of things with costs that I pay attention to with electric. The actual cost, how much is it per kilowatt hour? But then also, how predictable are those costs? And if you have these big spikes in the middle of the year, your budget just gets blown. If you have say rates increase along with inflation, and you have a 2% increase every year, and it's just flat, and you have that really predictable rise, you can adjust for that with your budget. And I think that's fair for people. Prices will rise, but it needs to be predictable.
So my interpretation is one of the things in SB4, though, and this is one of the things I didn't necessarily agree with, was allows them to kind of pre-charge for. So now we're playing catch up. Mm-hmm. Okay, they have invested their money, and now they can charge us to cover that investment and what it took to get us there. That's what happened. SB4 will allow them to pre-bill now. Is that? Am I correct in that?
This is a complicated subject, so yes. I will do my best to simplify it. Yes, it allows them to add the cost to the rate base earlier, and what it ends up doing is you have a new plant. So you have a gas plant that's $800 million, and that gets added to the rate case. At kind of that cash flow deal, it stair steps up during the life of the project. The way it was before, well, I say it still is now. No one's actually availed themselves to that QIP model. Okay. That'll come at the next rate case. They'll ask for it, and it can be denied by the PSC if it's not in the best interest of people. So this will be a couple years down the road. What we're under right now is called PISA, P-I-S-A, the Plant in Service Accounting, and that is the money is spent by the utility all the way up until it starts generating power, and then the entire cost of that plant goes in the rate base all at once.
Okay.
The entire cost of that plant includes all of the interest accrued during the time that that plant is being built. So what you end up paying through that entire process is not just the cost of the plant, but a compounding interest over years and years and years. And anyone who, missed some credit card payments can understand over the months and years just how fast that adds up.
So, okay, let's address that fact or that issue right now. We've only got about 7-8 minutes left. So that to me is not a bad thing. I mean, at the end when you finally have to start paying, that's okay. But if you would now, what we're going to talk about now is if you pre-charge, I'm paying for something that I may never use.
That is true, and it's a good argument, and we have to weigh all of it. Once you get to scale, it's not nearly as impactful. If you're a small utility and you have one plant and then you build one more, that's huge and it's going to really affect. If you have a very large system, it's minimal. But the numbers that we heard as far as the savings on the interest, $900 million plant, you're going to save 10%. You save $90 million to the ratepayer at the end of that 5 years.
Yeah, but now you're using the ratepayer as the financer, though.
Well, they already are. They're carrying the note.
But I get that, but you're asking somebody who, especially maybe even the elderly, who may not be here in 5 years, you're asking them to finance the new building, which they're not even going to receive a benefit from.
And when we talk about the increase, we're talking $1 or $2.
Yep.
And so it's not, as long as we don't approve them to build 30 different plants at the same time, it's not onerous, but it's fair. And for those that plan on moving out of the state or out of the region in 5, 6, 7 years, you have a really good argument to make.
Okay. Well, I'm not for or against. I'm just, folks need to know this. It was thrown at them. SB4 was thrown at them, and I voted against it for some of those reasons we talked about. And that's what I do as a legislator. I figure out what's best for my constituency. But stuff is thrown at people out there, and none of the truths are really told. So now maybe, hopefully, somebody listening to the show today may look at this and say, you know what? Maybe that was okay. Maybe I can live with it a little bit more. But I just want folks to understand that SB4 did not. That was not the cause of the rate increases we had this year, and I'm not condoning them. I thought they were horrendous. I had a $3,000 electric bill at one of my stores. Yeah. That's crazy. And by the way, for those of you, commercial properties pay substantially more rates for stores and businesses. We pay substantially more rate per kilowatt hour than a residential does. So if you think all your businesses out there, that's why I don't like credits. Okay.
Yes.
I don't, and I'm not asking for it, but I don't get a credit in my business for using so much energy. As a matter of fact, I get charged more for using it. But generally, your medium-sized to small businesses are the ones that are paying a lot for that. You get to your larger businesses, and they give away tax credits and things like that. That's a whole nother issue, a whole nother time. We don't have that much time. We've only got about a minute or two left. Mike, we've had some great discussions here today. A lot of it was about energy, which is what I wanted to talk about. Is there anything that you want to talk about real quick? We got about a minute and a half left, about you, your district, where you're going, what your legislation is this year, anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, I would encourage anyone that has questions about what I'm running this year to go out to my house page. Just look up Mike Costlow on Google. It'll bring you to my house page. I decided this year, the general rule is run 6 or 7 bills, and I think I filed like 25. That is here's what I want to do over the next 7 years. Really get it out there and get it started, because visibility out in this place is huge.
It is.
So we're going to start talking about it. But I've got some stuff out there for protections on data centers. One of the big ones, some things to shore up our electrical infrastructure and become a net exporter so that we can reap the benefits of selling power on the regional grid to places that are destroying their grid, like Illinois. Yep. We can offset some of our costs here with that. One of the big things that I'm doing for Lake St. Louis is we're looking for solutions to this issue with Peru Creek and the sedimentation and the massive cost it is to the city and the community association there. And one other is we had an issue with an illegal immigrant assaulting somebody, and an Uber driver revealed to us that we've got some issues with coming from Illinois and their problems bleeding in Missouri. We're going to try to shore those up. Lots of good stuff.
So just say real quick, again, Lake St. Louis was leading the county and probably the eastern part of the state in cracking down on a lot of crime is illegal, but cracking down on crime, car cloudings, movement of crime from the east to the west. Lake St. Louis has been instrumental through the police chief, the mayor in charge at the time.
Oh, yeah.
You guys have been instrumental in really getting some things done. And Mike, thanks for coming in today. And for those of you listening, I hope we've helped clear up some questions and get to know Mike a little better here. Thank you for tuning in to St. Charles Patriot Radio. We will see you next week. Thank you very much.